Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. In the previous video, we looked at the concept of replication, and I gave you a demonstration of what transactional replication was. In this particular video, we're going to go over what's called peer-to-peer replication. As you know, there are four types: snapshot and merge. I'm not, however, going to go over a snapshot replication because by understanding transactional replication and peer-to-peer replication, you'll have an understanding what snapshot replication is and what merge replication is. So in this video, we're going to concentrate on peer-to-peer because that's slightly different topology or architecture than the other three. So in this video, we're going to talk about peer-to-peer replication. So what is peer-to-peer replication? So what is peer-to-peer replication? Well, peer-to-peer replication is the process of having multiple servers that act both as the publisher and subscriber, and it has its own distributor. So it's basically a self-contained publishing environment, if you will. As such, when you update and insert or delete records or insert records or delete records or update records, then they are going to be synchronized in real time with each other. And the topology, or what's called the architecture, the design, is all what's called a master server, where you actually publish the data from, and then obviously it's propagated to your slave servers, if you will, when they connect to the master database. These servers are referred to as nodes. So when we're talking about peer-to-peer transactional replication, we use the keyword nodes to represent these servers that are both publishers and subscribers and have their own distributors. If one of the locations is down, if one of the servers is down, then the other locations or the other servers can stay up and synchronize, because each node acts, as I said, as a publisher and a subscriber. So it's a self-contained system. So they're not dependent upon each other. So if one system goes down, then the other system can obviously take over the role of publisher and subscriber. Couple of things that we need to set up before we actually do peer-to-peer replication, and this is one of the most important things that we have to do. We certainly know what a backup and restore process is, or database, so we must do that for each server in a replicated environment. So when you do peer-to-peer, we're first going to take a backup of the database of the master server, and then we're going to take that backup and we're going to restore it to the following servers that we are involved in peer-to-peer. This is important because we need to have absolute synchronization between all servers that are involved in this peer-to-peer configuration. So we'll be doing that, and I'll be showing you how to do that. The other thing that we must do for each server that's involved in peer-to-peer is enable the distributor in each server that is in replication. So these are the kind of things that we need to go over before we can discuss peer-to-peer replication. So now that you have an idea, let me just look at PowerPoint and just give you a presentation here. You'll hear this is the topology that I'm going to use right now for this demonstration, and that is I'm going to be using three servers: server 1, server 2, server 3, and they're all circular in fashion. So all these servers have both the publisher and subscriber and the distributor self-contained, and as does server 1, as does server 2, and as does server 3. And as you can see from the arrows, they are synced with each other. So if this server were to go down, then these will communicate with each other and have updated data. So that's an important thing to have. Now, obviously, in the previous video when I showed you how to do transactional replication, and I replicated data from the publisher to the subscriber, we could not update the subscriber to push back to the publisher. It was a one-way streak. This is why this is a great thing to have in peer-to-peer application, because no matter what happens on one server, it's propagated to the other server. So if I do an update delete statement here, they'll be propagated both in server 1 and server 2. So if I do anything in server 2, it's propagated to server 1 and server 3. And if I do anything on server 3, it's propagated to server 2 and server 1. So it goes in a circular fashion, as I said. So now that we've discussed the academics of what understanding of what peer-to-peer replication is, let's get into the actual demonstration. So what I want you to do, obviously, is let's open up our workstation. As usual, I always like to make sure you have the DC going. In this particular case, we have three servers you're going to need 3 servers. So we installed 3 servers at the very initial. So now we're going to utilize that 3rd server. So here what we can do now is, what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to create a database called PTP, peer-to-peer. So I'm going to be giving you this script also. So here we are on server 1. So the first thing we need to do is determine which database we're going to replicate. In this case, I'm just going to create one rather than using one so we can understand it from scratch. So I'm going to highlight this and let's do it one more time. Sometimes there's a disconnect. And let's see what's going on here. And there we go. So now if I refresh the database, I've got a database called PTP. In that PTP, I'm going to create a table called computers. And let's refresh it. And there we go. And in that computer table, I'm going to add these values, Sony 1, HP, Dell, and Apple. And let's look at those table, or that table. And as you can see, we have 4 records in that particular table. So that's fine. So now the first thing I'm going to do now is back up this database. Now, since it's important that all the database be absolutely synchronized to the 100%, if you will, then this process must be done off hours. So at this time, you would probably send out a email to all your users in your company and say, hey, there's going to be a downtime for the servers and we need to do some maintenance. So you may want in like an hour or 2 hours or whatever, you determine a window to do this upgrade. So you would do this off hours and not on hours, because it is critical that we get the backup of every single committed transaction. So having said that, let's do a backup. So right click, tasks, and I'm going to go through this process using the GUI rather than, so it's going to go to this file, which is the MSQL file. That's fine. Just make sure, I'm just going to override it and just go OK. So now that's completely done. We've taken a backup here, and there it is. So what I want this now is I want to take this backup, copy paste it to the next 2 servers, and then restore it there. So let's go to server 2. And you'll see now, obviously, well, in server 1, make sure that this particular, let me just go here, make sure that this particular file called backup on server 1 has permissions. So it allows, and we've gone over how to give permissions to folders. So actually, let me do this here while I'm here. Just press this computer. I'm still on server 1. What I did is I went down all the way to that folder, right click, if you go to share, advanced sharing, you'll see it's a network path. And if I go advanced sharing and permissions, you'll see that I've given that particular folder both access to server 2 and server 3 and given it full rights. So make sure you give that particular folder backup permission for server 3 and server 2. And we've gone over this many times, but just in case you forgot. So we've backed it up. So we're going to go to server 2. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go direct ourselves to the server 1 backup. And you know how to do this. Press the window key and R, and you'll get this. Obviously, we want to do a / server 1. And as soon as you go OK, we're going to go back up. And there it is. That's how I got to that. And we've gone over that before. So this is the backup of server 1. So I'm going to just copy. And I'm going to paste it in the directory of the SQL server here on server 2. So I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to do, and that's done, so we can get rid of that. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing on 3. I'm going to go to the SQL server 1. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to dump it in the backup folder for server 3. And now that's done. So now that we have the backups of SQL Server 1, now that we have the backups of PTP, we don't need that either. Now that we have the backups of there, we're going to restore it on the first server, server 2. So right now we don't have any databases called PTP, so right click, restore database, device, direct yourself, add. And this is why I dumped it there, because it'll automatically take you by default to that directory. Go OK, OK, options, overwrite just in case, files, make sure you relocate, and go OK. And that database has been restored, as you can see. We're going to repeat the same process for 3. So no database call PTP, right click, restore, device, add, and again it's going to go to that directory, so it makes the life a little easier if you just dump in that directory. And again, options, overwrite, files, let's relocate, and go OK. And that's successful also. So at this point, as you can see, if I go to server 1 and expand this, I got a table called computers. If I go to server 2, table, computers, and so on. So right now it's 100% synced, and that's the way we want it.